Now, the first questions that people usually ask me when it comes to writing their common application personal statement is, of course, what do I talk about? There's a lot of different ways that people usually address this, but I like to start with something that I call the hallway principle. Now, the hallway principle you might have heard before. It basically is that if someone printed out your common application essay, dropped it in the middle of your high school, and then someone picked it up, they'd be able to read it and know exactly who to return it to. Of course, there are caveats with this. You might talk about things that are a bit more personal to you that other people don't know. So we can pretend that there's an omniscient being or omnipotent being or whichever word it is that is wandering through the hallways of your school that picks up this paper. Regardless, the point is that we want to be talking about something that is very essential to understanding who you are. Maybe you're talking about an activity that you spend a lot of time doing that's really important to you. Or maybe you're talking about an experience that has formed a lot of how you think about the world. It could be an essay that's about an important person in your life and how that person has continued to have an impact on you and how you interact with the world and behave. Or it could even be a story about a dream you had as a kid and how it continues to inspire you today. Really, the whole point is that it can be anything you want, but it should be something that is really reflective of who you are. And ultimately, no one knows exactly who you are. It's yourself. So the whole point is that you are using this hallway principle as a kind of thermometer to think, okay, does this story really get at who I am? Is it really an honest reflection of myself? Or am I really just trying to fit myself into a story that I think this admissions officer would like me to have? I hope that is pretty clear in what I'm saying. The second suggestion that I like to give to people is to grab attention. So close your eyes a minute. Imagine that you are the last file on your admissions officer's desk before they get to go home for the night. They have about 7 minutes to read your essay, and then they're either marking it for follow-up or whatever it is, or they're closing it and putting it in the discard pile. What is it that you can say in this essay that will grab their attention? What is it that you can say that will make them want to spend their time on your file, reading through your essay? What is it that you can say that will captivate them, grab their attention, show them something that maybe they haven't read in other files? This question is very open-ended, and I definitely don't have any direct answers for you because every answer I could give you is probably a cliche that other people have used. But the whole point is that you want to be saying something that is interesting. You want to be saying something. Don't just tell a story. Tell us how it impacted you. Tell us how it continues to change how you think about the world or how you behave or your academic interests, like basically whatever, but it should have a sort of so what behind it. The third tip that I have for when people are thinking about what to write about in their common application essay is to really think of stories that show their admissions officer that they are worth fighting for. You might be wondering, what do I mean by that? They're not picking up a sword and going to battle for you. But something similar is actually kind of happening. How admissions works at Stanford and a lot of our peer institutions is that you have admissions officers who are assigned to read all of the applications from your area. For my case, it was that I had an admissions officer who is assigned to read all the applications coming out of Washington State and all of Latin America except for Mexico, which is a pretty weird combination. But then what they do is that they pull out from all of those applications, then a list of applications that they think should get into their institution, in my case, Stanford. Then what they do is they go before a committee of other admissions officers and basically try and argue why their applicants should get in. And what this all means is that you need to be communicating in your essay something so convicting that it makes these admissions officers want to not only vouch for you, but vouch for you hard enough to get other people to agree with them that you should get into their institution. And so you might be wondering, how am I going to think of a story that makes other people want to fight for me, right? What does that mean? What does that look like? What I suggest is starting with the questions of, what is something that is about me? Then how does that thing that's about me relate to the greater concept of who I am as a person? That will make the admissions officer want to feel, or actually feel, a bit more of a deeper connection with you. And the third thing is, what does this greater thing about me and myself show about my aptitude for the institution that I want to go to? In my case, I talk about how my intersectional identity, which is one unique thing about me, then reveals my ability to cross bridges with other people and connect with people, even when they might have differences, which is the broader thing about me. And then that prepares me for Stanford, because at Stanford, I'll be able to make a lot of connections with people and then pursue a career in public service where I'm able to help bridge a lot of divides in our country and in our world to connect with people. So that's the sort of example. I'm giving a little bit of a sneak peek instead of talking about it a bit later, because I think that this is a really important thing to communicate. The other important thing that I want to get across when it comes to this third tip also is that most stories will work. It really isn't the story as much as the so what, which really is the what does this show about you and your preparedness for college. Having this so what should really be what makes your admissions officer want to fight for you also. So that should be kind of like the punch to your essay. It's also going to be essentially be like the thesis to your essay. Of course, don't write it in like a 5-paragraph AP style format, because that'd be lame. The fourth suggestion that I have is to think about your narrative that you want to come across in your essay. And by narrative, I do not mean to lie at all, because the thing is that if you lie, someone will always lie better than you, and the truth will always be more interesting than the lie that you're going to say. So just don't lie, be authentic, be honest. But by narrative, what I mean is basically like branding yourself. So what you want is your admissions officer to have a strong sense of exactly who you are. You have existed in the world for probably 17 or 18 years by now. You have a lot of stories, a lot of elements of who you are, and that's awesome, that's great. But you don't need to communicate every single detail about yourself in this one essay. Instead, it's important to think about what it is about you that you want to communicate to your admissions officer and how you can weave that together in a comprehensive and cohesive way that easily comes across to them and makes you memorable. So, for example, when we're thinking about branding, we can think about Starbucks, for example. Yeah, they have great cake pops, they have all these bakery items, they have frappuccinos, they have all these different drinks, all this stuff. But when we think about Starbucks, we don't think about all that. We think that they have a green logo, they're from Seattle maybe, they make coffee, they have drive-thrus. Okay, cool, that's what we have. So as you're sharing your own narrative, it should be similarly like based in certain things that are easy to remember that also flow well together. What's important also is to not have things that disagree with one another unless the point is that they disagree with one another. So for example, if you're talking in one part of your essay about how you are very disciplined and like to have things in a certain order and all this stuff, then like it doesn't make sense if you're talking about how messy you are later, right? You want things to be cohesive, they want to be branded, you want to take elements of who you are and communicate them in a way that is memorable and that flows together well.